Made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
A very good night to you and welcome to this edition of the People's Business Live. I'm your presenter, Ryan Broom. Tonight, our topic is agriculture, the state of food production. And to help us do that, we have an esteemed panel, which includes James Paul, the Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society, and also noted entomologist, Mr. Ian Gibbs. We're back with opening comments after this break. Welcome back to this edition of the People's Business, where tonight the topic is agriculture, the state of food production. And we've all seen that the impacts of climate change on food production in Barbados in some way or form. Earlier this year and not very long ago, we experienced the hot and dry conditions that farmers would also have been grappling with. And then more recently, we've had, it's very welcome, but in excessive amounts at times, the rainfall, which is good for farmers for some crops, but not too much for some of their crops as well. And just to kick us off and give us an idea of where the state of food production is in Barbados right now, I go to Mr. James Paul, the Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society. Good night, Mr. Paul. What is the state of production right now, food production, given all of those experiences that the farmers have had to endure?
Well, first of all, good night to your viewers. Yeah, good night. Um, Yourself. The state of production actually is a bit challenging, but not across every commodity. But it is a bit challenging at the moment, largely because of the fact that the challenges that farmers have had to experience this year in respect of the weather cause certain situations which otherwise would not have been there. So, it is that, there are certain commodities which you find, especially in fruits and vegetables, that, we are relatively short of at the moment. But, the thing is that what we are saying is that as the conditions start to change, you will see a much more friendly and hospitable climate for persons involved in agriculture. And we would expect that as we go on, it will continue to change, so you will see more production coming out.
Okay, and now turn to you, Mr. Gibbs. And I should let viewers know that we're because of a technical issue, he's joining us only live via audio, and you will be seeing therefore an image of him in for his clips. Mr. Gibbs, just give us an idea of how these impacts have been that they've been having on both the livestock and crops for farmers, and the implications really.
Well, good night to everyone. The impacts have been both on farmers that produce crops or plants as well as livestock. And I have seen firsthand farmers getting problems with production of things of crops like cucumbers and particularly tomatoes during the very hot times of this year. Also, the poultry industry, and Mr. James will be able to talk more about that. They have seen and gotten a lot of problems with the heat affecting their birds. Also, I know firsthand too from talking with a number of people, the dairy farmers have been getting problems due to the excessive heat, and this resulted in a very significant drop in production by the cows.
Okay, and Mr. Paul, people are talking about Christmas and the chicken, and we'll get to that in a moment. But we're also in the month of November, which is well known for conkeys, and I do know from personal experience that one of the commodities that has seemingly been in somewhat short supply is sweet potatoes, which is a part of that. Could you give an idea of what that situation is like right now in terms of the sweet potatoes?
I would say it could change at any moment. For instance, I was speaking to a farmer just on Friday. He has quite a few acres there. The problem is, how does he get into the field? The rains this weekend would not have helped him a lot because the thing he isn't fill up, and the disparity between the rainfall depending on the area. But the point is really that if we can get some dry periods going in there, people will be able to get inside and harvest. The other point I wish to make is that sometimes we don't get all the information that we require. And you find that farmers sometimes have um, pumpkin stored. So you might very well find that, farmers will be coming in with the crop, especially those who might have, pumpkin stored in the barns or something like that. But the thing is really, it all depends on the weather and, how it goes.
And also, I realize it would okras also fall under that category. That's another commodity that I found was in the recent weeks was also a little hard to find.
Again, challenges across the sectors. Ian could probably comment on that because the weather plays havoc, and then of course the question of pests because once the rain start to fall, the type of pests that you will get will change, and then that is where sometimes we try to get farmers as much as possible to work with the entomologists in terms of trying to find out early, look, what do you need to do in particular location to be able to safeguard yourself, and that's something that's always a challenge of ensuring that farmers do what is right at that particular point in time to safeguard their crop. I don't know, Ian probably might be able to comment more on that too.
So that
Yes,
that mhm.
as you rightly said, the pests change from one season to the next because we have primarily a dry season and a wet season. We don't have seasons like in the temperate countries. And in the dry season, you predominantly get problems with sucking pests. These are insects that suck the sap from the plant and cause all sorts of problems and also transmit diseases and viruses to the plants. And that changes to some extent as we go into the wet season, where you get more um, like caterpillars and beetle pests and so feeding on the plants and causing damage. So it changes from one season to the next.
Okay, Mr. Paul, before we get again to poultry, I just want to reflect a bit on the heat, even though it's been easing a little bit in recent weeks and days especially. Heat-wise, what kind of impact has that been having on farmers in terms of ability to, meet their usual expenses, especially when it comes to the poultry side of things? What's happening on that end in terms of managing those additional expenses, like cooling, for example? What's been happening there?
Well, in that respect, you're talking about poultry. I mean, cash flow is always a crisis because once you have a situation, especially in the poultry industry, where birds are not growing as quickly as they should, that means they're not reaching the market in the time that they're supposed to, and that in itself will have an impact on the cash flow of the farmer. So, where, for instance, that he might say expect 7 weeks or 6 weeks to go to market, it takes a little longer. That in itself means then that he ends up feeding the bird longer than he intended to feed them. And of course, that in itself will have an impact too on his profitability. Um, So the expenses will go up, and the cost. The thing is that in this environment that we are in, the farmer and the type of market that we're in also, the farmer does not have the opportunity to actually recover those costs. And because in a very competitive market as it stands, and we will see even more competition coming about because we know most people will actually prepare themselves to meet that Christmas demand. So it's not going to be easy.
Okay, and on the crop side of it now, the lack of water, funny enough, even though we're seeing so much of it now, was an issue in the earlier and middle parts of this year. Were those issues being resolved, notwithstanding the rains we've been getting from a supply point of view, in terms of the farmers being having access to a better water supply for the crops?
Of course, this would is pretty obvious. If they could access better water supply, that would be great. But they can also do other things too as well. Install their own water harvesting methods. Do more mulching of their crops, which is a cheap and very beneficial way of preserving the moisture in the soil, keeping the weeds down, keeping the soil cool, helping to prevent erosion if you were to get sudden downpours. So some of those are simple things that the plant growers can use. Also, even in the poultry industry, simple things like paint your roof, your poultry pen, the roof, paint it white or in silver. That can reduce the temperature in the pen by up to 5 degrees centigrade, which often can mean the difference between death of the birds and them being alive. Also, simple thing like decreasing the population in the pen. Instead of one bird per square foot, you can put uh, one bird to every 2 square feet. So it allows for greater movement of air within the pen, and hence to keep the birds a little bit cooler and reduce your risk of death in the birds.
Okay, and Mr. Paul, you had mentioned previously, I believe, that there was at least one major producer in terms of the poultry side that was having some challenges. What's the update on that? Has somebody taken over the operation, or is a lag being taken up elsewhere? What's the latest position with that situation?
Well, what I would say is that when we look at the placements for the year, the placements have not decreased by any significant extent. As a matter of fact, I know that even for the beginning of say November, um, the hatcheries would have placed even more birds in the first week because that now will take care, of course, of your Christmas production. So the point is really that the number of placements are still up, and if we go by the number of placements, we then could understand that that there should not be any issue arising as a result of a shortage in any way when it comes to poultry meat.
So that any shortage caused by that particular farm would have been taken up, basically, then would have been taken care of.
Yes, because what we have also too, we must remember that small producers take up a significant over 40% of the market. And the thing is really that the small producers instantly respond to demand. The other point I wish to make is that the supermarkets have played a very critical and important part in terms of the industry in itself. And one of the things we find in the supermarkets is that they like to diversify the sources from which they actually get chickens. And there's a lot of criticism sometimes we make of the supermarkets when it comes to the process of importation. But one of the things that we know is that they always, most of them will tell you, is that they want to ensure that they don't have to depend too much on one producer. And what we have seen talking to a lot of the supermarket people is that they have been diversifying their demand in terms of, trying to make sure that they involve as many players in the industry as possible. The problem, of course, comes in terms of reliability because you're running a supermarket and you cannot have a situation where if you expect to get a commodity, that you have a situation where anybody's going to tell you that they run out. So they also have to leverage that against the fact that you have to identify the dependable producers who are able to deliver a product consistent with quality and at a consistent price. And that is something, of course, that is a challenge. but they have been able so far to work in the market in order to achieve that.
Okay, before we go to break, Mr. Gibbs, a specific question for you. I recall mention made by, I believe, the Ministry of Agriculture had indicated that an invasive worm had been discovered in the island in a particular area that could have caused some problems for crop farmers. Is there any there? Is that still a concern, or has that situation abated somewhat?
I am not aware of any new invasive worms as such. If you were referring to that problem, I think it was in Garden Road or something like that.
I believe so. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, that's a local caterpillar that usually feeds primarily on river tambourine, Lucina, and really does not pose any problems to any crops at all. And I had mentioned this on CBC on the radio before.
Okay, I don't think that was the same one, but I'll double check that during this break. We'll be right back with the People's Business, reminding you that you can join us with your calls 228-5562, 228-5563. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to the People's Business Live. We're our topic tonight, agriculture, the state of food production. And quickly, we have a caller on the line, but quickly before we go to that caller, just to let you know, Mr. Gibbs, it was the New Guinea flatworm. This was back in June this year. They had been discovered in some areas of Christchurch, and there were concerns that it was spreading to other parts of the island.
Yes, but that is not a crop or plant pest at all. That is a predatory worm that will feed on things like earthworms. So that's why it's a problem.
Understood, understood. Okay, caller, good night to you.
Yeah,
please
good
go
night.
ahead with your comment or question.
Yeah, good night, Ryan, to you and your esteemed panel.
Hi, good night.
My question is going to be an easy one. Well, are we going to get back to exporting rather than exporting? Oh, excuse me.
Okay, that's okay. All right. Question open for the panel. Gentleman wants to find out when we're going to get back to exporting instead of mostly importing. I don't know if he's referring to specific crops of Mr. Paul. You can tell us if there are any intentions to push export as well in any specific areas of production.
Well, first of all, we do export some crops. For instance, in terms of poultry, you might surprise people to learn that there is some limited export of poultry, both in terms of, say, hatching eggs, not hatching eggs, sorry, baby chicks, and also we also export even, for instance, poultry meat and eggs. This, of course, is through the tourism industry, wherein, of course, ships call at the Bridgetown port, they need to be replenished, and they've drawn the supplies locally. There was a point in time too where we actually did export to places such as Antigua, and that respects strictly to, say, poultry products. The other thing is too that, for instance, Ian probably could tell you more about that, but in respect of vegetables such as say sweet potatoes and yams. There was before in Barbados some export of these items, but the whole question is the price. Um, where producers are able to get a better price on the local market for a particular product, it is not really, it's just not worth it. You will tend to find, for instance, that you have to at least have some type of break-even quantity above which you can somehow be able to export. But for instance, how do we export in a situation where we are not even able to satisfy our local demand for the commodity? And if you then go to the point of exporting, what you will likely do is, of course, to create shortages of the product at home. So that's the challenge. The first thing to do is that we have to ensure to increase our levels of production so that we can generate the type of surpluses or the type of, I don't want to use surpluses, but the amount of the commodities that will allow us to have enough to be able to export. Because one of the things too that we have to remember, if you are going to export, you have to also be able to do it at a reasonably good price. And unless you are able to achieve certain economies of scale that would allow you to sort of reduce the cost of production across the board for the product, it could be pretty challenging trying to export to certain markets overseas.
Are there any crop products that we are close to, to achieving that, you think, or that we could be close to in in the near future or distant future? You think any particular ones that we could possibly get that done with?
You could do it. Anything, but I don't know if Ian, you want to weigh in on that one because that would be interesting
Well,
too.
yeah. Last year, in particular, I think it was that the ministry was talking. The Ministry of Agriculture was talking a lot about a new sweet potato production project in which they were going to looking at the possible growing of big acreages of that crop for export overseas. But when I tried to delve into it a little more, um, it was suggested by quite a number of people that the prices that were being offered by the overseas importers was less than the cost of crop production here. So I don't know how far that will go. But I mean, look, a lot of people tend to forget our major crop, which is sugarcane,
That's
and
right.
we have an excellent export business with rum, right? And we cannot possibly supply all of the market overseas for our rums. So, I mean, to me, there's a excellent opportunity to increase the acreage again, once again, of cane to produce molasses and to produce our world-renowned branded rums, which have a demand worldwide.
Okay. All right. I believe we have another caller on the line. Please, caller, go ahead with your comment or question. Good night.
Good night to you and your panel. Um, I haven't heard anybody mention two of the problems that we as farmers have. We have a problem with one, monkey population, and the tripling of the price of irrigation water. And the prices, you cannot sell for anything more than what the competition is. So the farmers are losing big. Sometimes farmers can lose 2 acres of watermelons to monkeys. And what can we do about it? What is what government doing? Listen.
If I might put in my 2 cents on the monkeys, and then James, if you wouldn't mind handling the water issue. Um, this is something that people have been talking. Monkeys have been a problem in Barbados since about, I think, the first record was somewhere in 1647. They were causing problems. So it's nothing new. The fact remains, and the all of the farming community and even household and backyard growers will agree with me because they have time and time again that the monkeys are a significant pest. They do a tremendous amount of damage to our crops and our fruit trees, even cotton. They will damage and cause dramatic production decreases. Look, we have to be realistic. We need to manage the monkey populations on this island. We are not looking at destroying every single monkey on the island. No, no, no. We are looking at managing the populations to a degree where they will not cause significant damage to our crops, to our fruit trees, um, and yet be able to maintain their level of populations for their own reproduction and so forth. But the time you ever mention anything about management of the monkey populations on the island, you get all these people, especially even from overseas, armchair environmentalists who get all huffy about it. And I mean, some of them never seen a monkey in their life, and yet they're experts. They've never lived here. They don't. They've never experienced the problems that these animals can cause. I mean, when I was at the Ministry of Agriculture, there was one particular instance that really hurt me. An elderly lady, a pensioner, called me one day, told me, Mr. Gibbs, I have a few mango trees in my backyard, and the fruit I get from those trees every year helps me to pay a number of my utility bills and so forth. It was a significant input into her income every year. And she said, look, I cannot get a single mango out of those trees. They're destroying all. What can we do? So I mean, it's very disheartening, but we have to look at it pragmatically. And it seems to me, and I know I'm going to get all kind of stick for this, that the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of the Environment are passing the buck back and forth, particularly in terms of trying to find out the exact number of monkeys on the island. A survey was supposed to be carried out um, for over 2 years now, I believe. And one ministry says it's not their problem, and the other ministry is saying it's not their problem. So nobody is getting anywhere. But we need to find out that, because you need to know exactly what is the level of the animals on the island. Some people say 20,000, some people say 50,000. We don't know for sure. But we need to get a handle on that to institute a proper management program.
Okay.
That's why I want to agree with the comments from Ian, and to add, look, we also need to look at certainly the bounty. I really think that we need to increase that bounty, even if we do it for a period, because if you're managing it properly, once you're aware of the numbers, you increase the bounty so that you can, for instance, give farmers, sorry, bounty hunters, greater incentive to go after these monkeys, because it is an expensive proposition. When you have people who have to go after these monkeys, they have to buy equipment to do it. So therefore, I think that is something that we need to have some flexibility with. On the matter with the water, I mean, I want to say that the BS has been an ardent advocate in terms of the whole question of water, because when the price of water went up originally, it was, and it still probably is, a considerable disincentive to production of agricultural commodities, not only livestock, but crops, both crops and livestock. What we saw, for instance, in the last permutation that we had, was that there was an increase in the for the people who are in the IRDP areas, which is the rural development areas. What we saw was there was where they were paying low rates, they are now paying, of course, at the $1.80 per cubic meter. Now that in itself, even at that rate, some farmers are finding it challenging in order to pay the water. And it is, you see, the problem that we have in the sector is that you have farmers who are what we would call part-time farmers who do not rely for their sustenance on agriculture alone. And then you have other farmers who I can tell you we have at the Bay as some farmers who are 100% farmers. Basically, they rely on the sustenance, on their sustenance from agriculture. And what you find is that there's a split here, where some farmers will feel that, look, there are some farmers who are telling you, even at the current prices, we cannot make do with the costs. And there are others who, of course, have an alternative source of income, will tell you it is okay. And that is part of the challenge that we face. But let us face it. The fact of the matter is that water and the cost of water, especially in this environment where there have been considerable increases in the cost of other inputs, they do pose a serious challenge to the farming community, and especially when, for instance, you have to take into consideration that not every crop that you're going to put into the ground is going to mean that you're going to be able to make money out of it, and that's just not the case. I would tell you that we have made representation to, for instance, the Barbados Water Authority, and I think they have listened in some respects in terms of, looking to see how we can give farmers who, for instance, you have a situation where there are farmers who might have a household attached to the supply that is used to actually use for growing crops. And I think that they're listening to us, and at least hopefully they'll be willing to give concession to those farmers. But I still don't think that really it is fair enough, because many people in the community do not appreciate the challenges that farmers face, and the fact that, look, when you look at it, if anyone can say that the price of agricultural commodities has risen drastically in the last 10 or 20 years, I think that they basically dishonest, because when you look at it, outside of, say, livestock products, most vegetable products have remained at the same price constantly over the last 20 years. You can still find, for instance, a crop such as sweet potatoes, once they are plentiful, they sometimes sell for less than $1 a pound. And that's a fact. Okay? And if you go across, even you take cucumbers, many cucumbers were plentiful even this year. They could go as low as 50 cents a pound, which is extremely low. Now, how does a farmer make money in a situation where the crop that he's producing, that he's paying, say, at the moment, $1.80, $2.70 per cubic meter, how does he make money on that? These are the hard questions that people do not recognize when they hear people calling about, we need to control the price of agricultural products. But at the same time, the cost of the inputs we are not controlling, and that in itself poses a real challenge to farmers. So we have to find a way still to see how we can assist farmers in a situation where there have been increases in the other cost inputs that we can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paul. Well, we do have a call
If
on
I
the line,
might
but,
just
but
make a,
uh,
oh,
just,
sorry.
just, just stick a pin, Mr. Gibbs. I'm going to allow you to,
Okay.
maybe we have to take a
Right.
break here really quick. I'll allow you to make your comment. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the People's Business Live, where the topic tonight, agriculture, the state of food production, and I was about to allow Mr. Gibbs to weigh in on the topic that we just, arising from the caller's question.
Yes, I mean, there are some simple things that farmers, especially the smaller farmers, can do to bring down the cost of their water in the on their farms, and things in the roofs and so but then be used to enhance their crops. The use of
Just apologize, getting just a few audio issues with Mr. Gibbs, Mr. Gibbs' connection. We do have a caller on the line though, so we'll go ahead with the comment or question from the caller. Caller, please
use
go ahead.
mulching,
Okay.
cut sour grass from the sour grass pastures and mulch their crops, even sugarcane, to hold the water in the soil, keep the soil cool, suppress the weeds, and it worked well. It added more organic matter into the soil because our soils in Barbados are very low in organic matter. So that helped tremendously as well. So those simple little things can be done to reduce the amount of overall water that the farmers might have to put to their crops.
Okay. Thank you. Miss Caller, could you please go ahead with your comment or question? Good night to you.
Good night to you on the panel. I just want to know, I have a small lime tree, and it begins to get the leaf curling at the top. So I just want to find out what I can spray on it, or should I clip off the area that the leaves are curling?
Um, Now let me ask. There are different types of curling. Um, you know how when you make steam flying fish, how you curl the fish?
Yes, please.
Is it curled like that, or is it curled up from the edges?
It curls like from the tip of the leaf back down to the base of the leaf. It mostly curling
Mm-hmm.
at the tip.
Okay. That may be because there are two different types of things that can cause that. But the situation that you're mentioning sounds like it could be citrus leaf miner. Um, Citrus leaf miner is under reasonably good biological control on the island, but from time to time, with any dynamic situation like that, you do get ups and downs in the population. So if you have to control it, you can use an insecticide that I have found that has worked very well on it is one of the abamectins, like numectin, for example.
Okay. I think I will
Okay.
try and
Okay.
see how it goes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, caller. Mr. Paul, you were talking about prices just now in terms of the inputs, especially when it comes to the inputs for farmers. What is the state of the prices on the other side in terms of the livestock food production? Because I agree with you that you are right that most of the crops in terms of the soil related crops are, you do find that those prices tend to stay in terms of whether there's a glut or whether there's a shortage and so on. They do fluctuate. But what's the state of the other side of things? Meats and
Well,
so
on the
on.
other side, farmers have had to face increases in the cost of inputs also. Ordinary treatments for cuts and bruises for animals, all of those things have gone up, and in some cases by 100% over the period. So you've seen steep increases in these items, and as a result of that, there are issues as far as trying to ensure that you're able to maintain reasonable prices and control your costs.
You're happy though with the reductions that we've been seeing in recent times from the feed producers and so, and
Well,
has that helped in any
certainly.
way really?
Well, let me put it this way: any reduction in price, would, of course, be of assistance to the farming community. And I just want to make that clear. There's a debate even among farmers now as to whether or not the amounts that they have reduced by are adequate. For instance, just this morning, just looking at the movement of corn on the international market, we are seeing that there's what we call a bear market, where basically the prices of corn are dropping. Now, we are hoping that, for instance, if those prices continue to drop further, that you will see that will translate into benefits for the livestock farmers in terms of low prices for feed. But the truth is really, when you look at the days of $3.50 per bushel corn, that is something that has passed and gone. We're hoping, of course, that if as they continue to drop, they will go back to those days, and hopefully then we can see prices return back to the levels that they were, say, pre 2020. So right now, I can't tell you that farmers are happy with where prices are at, even in terms of feed costs. But we are hoping that as things change on the international market, and we go back to what we would call a bear market, where prices are actually dropping, we can see some improvement as far as prices are concerned.
Okay, I believe we have another call on the line. Caller, good night to you. Please go ahead with your comment or question.
Good night, gentlemen. I want to touch particularly on the monkey situation. And if Mr. Gibbs highlighted that we've been having this problem since 16, whatever, I am of the view, as he had indicated, that you don't want to kill every monkey. But you can have a habitat somewhere where you have a couple hundred saved and put a virus in all the remaining monkeys and destroy every one of the remaining monkeys, and that would solve it once and for all. A couple hundred you save in a habitat.
The interesting thing about these things that we postulate on is this: to what extent do we attribute real importance to food security? Food security, to my mind, must rank number one, because we are not watching what is happening on the international market. We are not seeing that in terms of the production of food worldwide, and the flows, that small countries such as Barbados are going to be marginalized in the future when it comes to access to food production. So, in as much as there are some of us who seem to believe that once we can pay for it, it does not matter. The question is that we will soon come to recognize is that even if we had the money, the food will not be available to us, because larger buyers like China, who are able, of course, to pay better and, of course, give better rewards, of course, are able to supply them with food, will be able to buy it in larger quantities than we will be able to. And people will say, well, why send that particular crop to Barbados? I think that really, if we recognize that, to see that, we can find ourselves running short in terms of certain critical food supplies, I believe that we will give greater urgency to this whole question of the monkey population. Look, the thing is really that we have been playing around with it too long. We have been listening too much sometimes to those persons who are what they call the animal rights activists. We also be listening to those persons who maybe those saying that is another form of tourist attraction. But the fact of the matter, even in larger countries, okay, larger countries cull animals when they actually get when the population growth is too much. And I go back to the point made by Mr. Gibbs, where, for instance, we should be doing an agricultural census. I believe it's every 10 years or so we should be doing it. We have not done an agricultural census. I don't know. We haven't since I was in the industry. We have not done it, and it needs to be done. We have been talking about doing it. We have not done it. But in the same way, we need also to do a census on the monkey population, because we need to know what numbers we can manage or deal with. And once we get to the numbers we've established, that we need to cull the population down and do whatever it takes in order to cull that population down to where farmers can feel assured that when they make an investment in in crops in the country, that they are at least assured that it will not be damaged by those monkeys.
Okay, I believe we have another caller on the line. Good night, caller. Please go ahead quickly with your comment or question.
Yeah, good night. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. First of all, up front, Mr. Paul and the other guests, I'm against destroying the monkey population of Barbados. If this has been going on for over the years, you should seek international help. There are certain international organizations and donors that contribute money to Barbados, and they're very thing in animals. Look, if you go upstate New York during the summertime, the farmers up there does know how to control the bear population from destroying their crops. Have your organization ever seek or ever asked for such international to come into here? Simple. Tranquilize the monkeys, and we can have our children one in the north, one in the south for these monkeys. And I don't think about destroying the monkeys. If you do that, they're not going to get international funding for certain work. I am against it. I'm against it.
Sir, let me just say quickly. We seem to have some romantic notion about people coming from abroad to tell us what to do. Okay? First of all, let me just make it very plain. In the United States, they kill animals as a way of controlling the population. Secondly, okay, you are in the debt trap that we are in Barbados. Why? Because of the fact that we are not producing enough food, okay, and we have and we can produce enough food, but the reason why we're not producing it is because we have problems with that monkey population. I think we need to stop making excuses, okay, for not doing what we are supposed to do. Other countries recognize that their agriculture is important, and they are taking the same steps I'm talking about. They are taking. I don't know which world you are coming from, okay, but the fact of the matter is that okay, we need to control the monkey population in Barbados. If farmers are really to be encouraged to at least achieve the 25 by 25 initiative that has been spoken to by the president, you cannot expect farmers to go and put crops in the ground only to see them being reaped by these animals. I think it is just nonsense. And I think really that the question that you ask shows the lack of empathy and sympathy that sometimes seems to come from certain sections of the Barbadian public, okay, for farmers who have invested a lot. See, some of these farmers invest over $20,000 in an acre in a crop, okay, only to see it in a matter of weeks, all of that being decimated. There is absolutely no excuse, and I think we have to treat it more seriously and stop fantasizing and listening to people who have no interest whatsoever in the sector. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paul. That's a good
Ryan,
point
if
at
I can
which
make
to.
one little
Oh,
comment here.
really quickly, because you have to go to break.
Yeah, with regard to what the previous caller had said about introducing a virus to control the monkey population, I think that is completely wrong, because it could move from the monkey population onto the human population. It's a possibility, and we really don't want that to happen.
That is true. That is true. Okay, we're back with our final segment after this break, where I'll try to find out something about what's happening pork-wise as we head into Christmas. Welcome back to the People's Business Live, where we're into the home stretch. And before the break, I had mentioned that I want to find out what's happening pork-wise. Pork is another big part of Christmas. Mr. Paul, you can also just generally say whether you have any concerns about any specific shortages that we might be having going into Christmas, or if you think we would still be able to supply the usual expected Christmas fare.
I don't believe we'll be able to supply everything. And I just want to make that very clear. And Ian could even talk about the fact that there's some commodities because of the rains, what we've had before. I mean, herbs right now, for instance, is something that a lot of people are talking about. They're looking to plant. They've been in short supply. And I believe really that you could probably have some challenges going inside there, going into the Christmas and things like that. Pork is another. I don't think you should have any problem in terms of pork because look, traditionally farmers in Barbados plant, they grow for that season. That's when you could actually sell any amount of pork at Christmas. And if I know farmers will have pork in readiness. One of the things, though, I will say this: I've been hearing the rounds recently in the pork community. There's a rumor going around that there are two containers that have come in out of Suriname. Now, look, hold on. We always have this penchant in this country for imports. And I really think that it will be a sin if at a time when farmers have an opportunity to make a lot of money, okay, to feed their families, and they're not exorbitant in terms of the demands, okay, that was to be robbed of them by imports. And I want to make it very clear that I'm hoping that government recognizes this, okay, and that we do not have a situation where any imports will be coming into the island around Christmas when it comes to food products. That's simply not, because farmers have the ability. There are farmers out there who basically design that if it is one time of the year that they will produce animals for, that is at Christmas time. Okay, so I don't think so. I don't think Barbadians need to fear that they will not be able to get the usual pork for the Christmas table. So I don't think we need to worry about that. When it comes to the area, for instance, of poultry and eggs, the industry has always done what it takes to ensure that Barbadians are able to have ample quantities of those two items on the table. We do not need to worry when it comes to that. The other point too I wish to make, when it comes to the area of fruits and vegetables, we have said before that there could be challenges in relation to some products, but I think that if the conditions out there change well enough going into Christmas time, we can see an improvement. And we can always make adjustments as we get closer to the period, but I don't think we need to worry that much, barring what could happen in the weather.
Okay, and the sweet potatoes you said might be a challenge in terms of the wetness that we have now.
Well, right now, I mean, it's harvesting. I mean, if you look at it, whenever you get this type of weather, the cost of harvesting tends to increase because you have to spend time cleaning the product. I sometimes go in at Massey stores like Massey and Carlton, and you see some lovely sweet potatoes. They're well washed, well cleaned. But it takes money. It takes time to do it, and I think that really people need to respect the type of effort that is required in order to get that produce in the appearance that it is. So yes, there could be some problems when it comes to the whole area of sweet potatoes.
Okay, I believe we have a call on the line. Caller, please be quick with your comment or question as we're into the final few minutes.
All right.
Caller, please go ahead with your...
Good night, everyone.
Hi, good night.
I have an idea about the monkey population because I know they're very destructive. I mean, we butcher sheep, we butcher cows, people butcher pigs and rabbits and all sorts of animals. I think they should set up something where people can capture the monkeys where they can and bring them to a point where they can be butchered, like how you butcher sheep, and sell the meat as dog food and use the money to pay the people that catch them.
That's an interesting one. I've never heard of that, but interesting. Mr. Gibbs, go ahead.
Because in some countries they kill as wild meat. I know Dominicans will love it, and in some parts of Trinidad it's considered to be wild meat. I think that is an excellent idea. There's some people who come to me with the idea, and that monkey meat seems to be very good, a very good thing for some people. I don't know why we can't try that.
Mr. Gibbs, your take.
I guess it's an opportunity that may be worthwhile investigating, but I can see and hear the repercussions that the overseas, in particular people, even some locals, will have when that sort of thing is mentioned. But if I may come off of that topic just for a short while,
Yes, you can.
and
But what? Just really quickly, we're into the final 3 minutes. So if you could
yeah, I
put this
mean
into your final
there are
comments as well. So go
we
ahead.
we we believe that drought and high temperatures are going to be a fact of life um,
Yes.
going forward. So I think farmers need to sort of prepare themselves for this eventuality and to look at planting more heat and drought tolerant crops, and also look at the possibility, particularly in the dairy industry, of looking at other breeds of cattle that can tolerate the heat much better than these enormous um, dairy Holstein cattle that have been foisted on us from North America and which do not suit our conditions whatsoever.
Okay, Mr. Paul, your final comments.
Well, my final comments, I want to support what Ian said just now, and also to add, radio larceny, we didn't get a chance to discuss. But I really
Yes.
want to thank the police for, some progress that they made in some of the cases recently. I really think, though, that, again, we need to do a better job of monitoring the points at which agricultural produce are being sold in this country, because, the produce has somewhere when it is stolen. And I think that the police, as good as much as they are trying to do, they can only do it if people out there cooperate with the police in terms of trying to inform them when they notice persons who are not legitimate buyers of agricultural produce when they see them selling it. That's the whole thing. Because we need to do something. Pre larceny, it is a disincentive, it's the same as the monkeys, and something needs to be done about it. And we need to cooperate with the police in order to make sure that it is stamped down on and eliminated.
Really quickly, you think the penalties still could be beefed up a little bit more? Penalties?
Of course, maybe that is an effective deterrent. But I think the most effective deterrent is just, look, people have to recognize what they're putting in farmers. So because when we talk about investment in agriculture, you are not going to get the type of investment that is required to stimulate the production of commodities. Okay, if farmers have to continue to face the scourge of not only predatory larceny but also the monkey problem at the same time. We need
Okay.
to tackle those two things because we want to see greater agricultural production.
That's a good note on which to end. I want to thank both of you, my panelists, Mr. James Paul, the CEO of the Barbados Agricultural Society, and noted entomologist, Mr. Ian Gibbs. Thank you both so much for being with us. The topic tonight has been agriculture, the state of food production in Barbados. I've been your presenter, Ryan Broom. Please do have a good night. Apologies to the callers who weren't able to get in their calls.